Hello everybody, I am Nick Harrison with Rocky River Woodworks, and today I'm going to be redoing the tabletop to my router table. It's a DIY router table made completely of 3/4 inch MDF. It's been doing pretty good, but I'm going to be redoing the fence and redoing the top surface, swapping it out from MDF to melamine. Stick around. Before I get started, let's address the elephant in the room, this sweet hat. You can find one also on my website at rockyriverwoodworks.com/shop. You can find hats, t-shirts, stickers, anything you want. Check it out. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove my MDF top off the current top off the router table, as well as disassemble my fence. Now, I could just throw this fence away. I'm not saving the material, but I would like to save all of the wood screws that I use to hold it together. So that's what I'm doing here, and then I'll just dispose of the MDF. Now I'm going to remove my router lift and undo all the wires and screws holding it in, and then remove the tabletop itself. I need to measure the subtop, if you will, the first layer, the width and the length. In my case, I'm at about 24 by 40. So I ripped down a piece of melamine long ways, and then I'm measuring it width ways to cross cut it. You could do this on a table saw sled, or if you have a track saw, you could use it, but I'm pretty good with a skill saw, so I decided to do that. I then just make sure that it does fit and it becomes square, and then I mark the center point, both long ways and wide, if you will, to know where to cut out for my router lift, and then I'll lay the router lift plate on there. Make sure that it is centered in all directions and square, and then trace it out. I then router down the depth of the plate just along the edges, about 1 inch or so. I don't need to do the whole thing because I'm routering out a lip on the edges, and then the center of the area, the bulk of it, I will just cut out. Here I'm drilling a pilot hole for my jigsaw, and then using a jigsaw to cut out the bulk of that, leaving just the lip around the outside for the router base plate, the router lift plate to sit into. Next, I make sure that the holes line up and that my router lift will go in correctly. I'm just doing a dry fit. I'm using a little bit of persuasion with a dead blow mallet to get it to fit, but it is snug just how I like it. For the fence system, I'm going to be using the Incra T-Tracks. I have an 18-inch bar here. I only need about a 9-inch bar, so I'm cutting it in half, and I'm getting 2 bars out of my 1 bar that I purchased. I've noticed that if you go really slow, you can actually cut these bars on a miter saw with a regular wood blade. The next thing I'm going to do is work on the fence. I cut 1 piece of melamine 4 inches wide, and then I rip another one to 4 3/4 to account for the first 3/4 inch width. And then I go over to the miter saw and cut them to 40 inches long, which is the width of my table. I now cut several 4 by 4 inch blocks out of melamine. They'll be used as supports for my fence. I then mark the center of the front piece and the bottom piece of the fence, and then measure 1 inch out to each side, so a 2-inch wide opening, and then trace that out, and then I'm going to use the bandsaw to cut that out. This will be the opening to allow not only the router bit to penetrate through, but also for dust collection. The next thing to do is to drill pilot holes, countersink, and drill wood screws of the front piece of the fence into the back piece, the bottom piece of the fence. It is important to countersink these holes before you put screws in them, just because you don't want your workpiece to catch on those screws. Next, I use those 4-inch blocks to drill, again with countersink and pilot holes, supporting the front piece to the bottom piece. I then put one piece on either side of the dust collection opening. This is important to create a chamber so I get a good suction, a good vacuum when the dust collector is running. I then add a top piece, and my dust port I lay on there to trace out the opening on the top piece. I then drill a pilot hole and use a jigsaw to cut out that oblong circle, which will allow the dust port to suck air from inside that chamber in the fence. I get the dust port lined up and secure it into place. I just use regular wood screws here and screw through the flange on the dust port into the melamine. I then note the location on the tabletop of which I would like to install the T-Tracks. I think I did about 8 inches from each side. And then I transfer that onto the tabletop and trace out the T-Track where it's going to go. I then set my router to the depth of the T-Track and carefully route out the slots for the T-Track to go. These don't have to be perfect because you're not really going to see it. But once I get it where I would like it, I do a test fit with the T-Track into place. You don't want to screw this down yet because the screws for the T-Track are slightly longer than the thickness of the melamine. So you want to secure your tabletop down before you secure the T-Tracks in place. When securing the tabletop down, be sure to also countersink the holes so that your workpiece can slide across the tabletop easily. After your tabletop is secured in place, you can then use the included screws with the Incra T-Track to secure the T-Track into place. The next thing to do is to measure to the center point from the sides of the T-Track and then mark and drill a hole through the fence to correspond to that measurement. The hole in the fence needs to be roughly the same size as the bolts you're going to use for your fence. After my holes are drilled, I'm using the Incra Build It knobs that comes with the bolt, washer, and thread knob. I'm going to slide those into the T-Track and then through the holes in my fence that I just drilled, and then secure the knobs in place. The last thing to do is to run my wires back through my router table and permanently put my router lift in place. To do this, I use a few washers under the sides of my router base plate if they're not quite level or flush with the top of my tabletop to make those flush, and then I use screws in the 4 corners of the base plate of the router lift to secure it into place. All right, so the upgrade to the router table is now complete. I think I'm gonna like this better. It's a lot easier to adjust the fence with the Incra T-Tracks and the Build It knobs, the way I have it set up now, as opposed to the clamp method I was using before with just regular F-style wood clamps. Also with the melamine top, I think it's gonna slide a lot smoother, my work pieces. We'll see. I'm gonna try it out and hope for the best. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. You can find this project and more on my website at www.rockyriverwoodworks.com, which is also where you can find the cool hats, stickers, shirts, hoodies, stuff like that. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RockyRiverWW. Thank you for watching.